Hey everyone, and welcome to the deep dive.
Hmm.
This one is going to be great for our MBO students out there studying IT systems and devices.
Yeah, that's right. We're focusing on period 2 this week, and I think we can make those assignments a little easier to deal with.
Think of it like a study session with some friends.
Exactly. We'll break down some of the key concepts from your materials so you can walk into class feeling like you can handle anything.
So this week, it's all about servers. And I've always thought this was a bit confusing even when I was starting out. But
Right.
the word server itself, what is it exactly?
It can be a few different things, the hardware, the software.
Is it like an IT genie granting wishes or something?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No, it's not quite like that. The important thing is understanding what a server does. Think of it this way. You have your own computer at home, right?
Yeah.
A server is like a more powerful computer that's made to do specific tasks, like,
Okay.
storing files, hosting websites, managing email for a bunch of people.
So it's kind of like the behind-the-scenes workhorse of the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have all these different ways those servers communicate with other computers, like server client networks and peer-to-peer networks. What's the difference between those?
Okay, so imagine you and all your classmates are working on a project together.
Right.
In a peer-to-peer network, you're all sharing your files directly with each other.
So it's kind of like passing notes back and forth in class,
Yeah, exactly. Like that, it's pretty easy to set up, but it can be slow.
especially if you have a ton of people involved.
Yeah, and it can get messy.
And what if someone loses their notes
Oh, that's the worst.
or spills their coffee on them?
Yeah, that's a big problem. And that's actually one of the big downsides of peer-to-peer. There's no central control. So if one computer has a problem, the whole network could be at risk.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So then what about server client networks? How do those work?
Think about a library.
Okay.
The server is kind of like the head librarian managing all the books and information. And then the clients,
The clients are...
the individual computers can get those resources, but everything is managed by the server.
So it's more organized, more secure,
Exactly.
but it's probably more expensive to set up too, right?
That's the trade-off. And you'll see this all the time in IT. A small business might start with peer-to-peer just to save some money. But then when they grow, they need to keep things secure and manage all of their users, so they move to server client.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So now we have a better idea of how servers work and the different ways they can be connected. But let's talk about the actual server operating system you'll be working with this week,
Okay.
which is Windows Server. And this thing's been around forever.
It really has. It actually started way back in 1993.
1993.
Wow.
It was a completely different world back then,
Yeah.
especially for technology.
Yeah.
So it's been evolving ever since then.
Oh, yeah. It's gone through a ton of updates and new versions. Like, we're on Windows Server 2022 right now, and they're already working on the next version.
Oh, wow. But then you have all these different editions of Windows Server. It's like Essential Standard Data Center, Essential Standard and Data Center. Why are there so many options?
Think about it like choosing an engine for a car.
Okay.
A small business with just a few people doesn't need the same power as a huge company
Right.
that's managing tons of data. The different editions are made for all those different situations.
And the price goes up too, the more you get.
Yeah, the price goes up with the capabilities and the level of support they offer.
So the more users you have and the more demanding the tasks are, the more powerful edition you need.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay, that makes sense. But speaking of powerful, I have to ask about the specs for Windows Server 2019. This thing can support up to 24 terabytes of RAM.
It's wild.
I can't even picture that much RAM. What kind of real-world situation even needs that much power?
Well, think about huge data centers or companies that do cloud computing or even scientists doing research with really complex simulations.
Oh.
They need that power to handle all that data and processing. It's a good example of how powerful this system can be. And that's exactly what you'll be seeing in your first assignment.
Perfect. That's a great transition. Let's dive into this week's assignment and make sure all our listeners are ready to go.
Sounds good. Your first assignment is all about really getting some hands-on experience with Windows Server.
Okay.
You're going to be installing it, configuring it, and really just becoming familiar with that environment.
Okay, cool.
So you'll be setting up 2 virtual servers, which is a great way to get that real-world experience without actually needing a whole room full of physical servers.
Oh, virtual servers. So we're not building server farms in our bedrooms just yet.
Haha, not quite yet.
Okay.
Virtual servers are basically like creating mini servers within your own computer.
Oh, okay.
It's like having these separate apartments in one building.
Right.
They're self-contained and don't mess with each other, but they all run on that same underlying hardware.
Okay, I get it. And that's where VMware comes in, right? That's the software we use to create and manage these virtual servers.
Exactly. VMware is a virtualization platform that lets you run multiple operating systems on just one physical machine, and that includes Windows Server.
Gotcha. Now, I remember when I was first starting out in IT, the instructions for setting up these virtual machines.
Yeah.
They could be a bit hard to follow. Any tips for our listeners to make this whole process go a little smoother?
Absolutely. The first thing is to understand what an ISO file is.
Okay.
You're going to be using one of those for this assignment. Think of it like a .zip file,
Okay.
but it's for an entire operating system.
Whoa.
It has all the files you need to install Windows Server on your virtual machine.
So it's kind of like the digital blueprint for our server.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of blueprints, I bet when you're setting up these virtual servers, all those specifications are really important.
Uh-huh.
Things like how much hard drive space you give them and how much RAM.
Oh, yeah. You're totally right. It's like building a PC. If you don't have enough RAM, even the fastest processor is going to be slowed down. Right? It's going to get bottlenecked.
You got to make sure that each of those virtual servers has enough resources to run smoothly.
So how do you know how much to give them? Any advice for someone doing this for the first time?
Don't be afraid to overestimate a little bit.
Okay.
It's easier to adjust things later if you need to. You can always make that virtual hard drive smaller, but making it bigger after the fact can be a bit tricky.
Right.
And then for RAM, think about what that server is actually going to be doing. A simple file server might not need as much RAM as a server that's running a complex database.
It's all about matching the resources to the task.
Exact.
Now, what about IP addresses?
Oh, yeah.
Those are super important for communication between servers, right?
Yeah, they are. Think of an IP address like a phone number for your server.
Oh, okay.
Every device on your network needs a unique IP address so it can send and receive data.
And I bet getting those IP addresses configured correctly is super important for this assignment. It's absolutely crucial. Make sure you double-check those numbers before you hit enter. One wrong digit can really mess up your whole network.
Yeah, that reminds me of this one time when,
What?
let's just say I learned my lesson about double-checking IP addresses.
We've all been there. It's all part of the learning process.
It is. It is.
And that's something I really want to emphasize to all of our listeners. This assignment is your first step into the world of Windows Server. There's a lot to learn, and it can seem a bit overwhelming at times.
Like opening the door to this giant server room and just blinking at all those flashing lights
Totally.
and thinking, where do I even begin?
Don't worry, though. Just break things down into smaller steps. Focus on getting those fundamentals down, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Right.
This assignment is about getting comfortable with those basic things. And as you go through the course, you'll keep building on that.
Okay. That makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So once we've got this first assignment down, what's next?
What else is coming up on this Windows Server adventure? We'll get ready to dive into DHCP, DNS, and group policies. These are some of the main tools you'll use every day as an IT professional.
Ooh, group policies. That sounds interesting.
It is. Imagine walking into a new IT job and bam, you can manage hundreds of PCs with these policies.
Really?
It's a skill employers are really looking for. Group policies let you manage and control all the settings for users and computers across your entire network.
Oh,
So you can do things like automatically install software,
wow.
enforce those security policies, or even customize how the desktop looks for hundreds of users
You can do all that.
with just a few clicks.
That's insane. It's like something out of a movie, you know?
I know, right?
Controlling a whole network from one place.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
And then there's DHCP, which is just as cool.
Okay, tell me about that one.
It's kind of like a digital welcome committee. It automatically assigns IP addresses to any new devices that join the network.
So no more manually assigning those IP addresses?
Nope. It saves you so much time.
That's amazing.
And then we have DNS, which is basically like the phone book of the internet. It takes all those website names that we can read and translates them into those numerical IP addresses that computers understand.
And so it's like a translator.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. It's like this whole system working behind the scenes to make everything run smoothly.
Exactly. And the best part is you're just getting started.
Oh, wow.
There's so much more to learn and explore, but for now, focus on getting this first assignment done. Get those virtual servers up and running, and we'll be back next time to help you with the next steps.
All right. That sounds like a plan. Until then, happy configuring, everyone. Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive, let's just do a quick recap for all of our MBO students out there who are getting ready for a busy week.
Yeah, good idea. Let's make sure everyone's walking away with those key points so they can rock that assignment.
All right, so first things first, we talked about how the word server can actually have a bunch of different meanings. It could be the hardware, the operating system, the services that it's providing.
Even the software that's running on it.
Right. It really depends on the context.
Yeah, think of it like one of those chef knives.
Yeah.
You know, you can use it to chop veggies or to carve meat or even to open a package. It all depends on what you need to do.
I like that analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we're talking about networks, there are those two main types we talked about.
Right.
Server client and peer-to-peer.
Uh-huh.
So with server client, it's like having one central library where that server is in charge of all the resources and the clients can get what they need.
And then peer-to-peer is more like everyone's in a study group and sharing notes and resources directly.
Yeah,
It's simple for smaller groups, but it can get a little messy and insecure as the group gets bigger.
definitely. Then we dove into the history of Windows Server, all the way back to the early 90s,
Oh, yeah.
and how it's changed over time to become this powerful system that it is today.
And you saw those crazy maximum specs for Windows Server 2019,
Yeah.
showing you how powerful this thing can really be. It can handle huge amounts of data and those really complex tasks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But for this week's assignment, we're starting with the basics.
Yeah.
Installing and configuring Windows Server in that virtual environment.
With VMware.
With VMware.
Yeah.
Right? And remember all those key terms we talked about, like ISO files, which are like digital blueprints for your server.
Exactly.
And VMware lets you create those virtual servers on your own computer.
Uh-huh. And don't forget about giving those virtual servers enough resources.
Yeah.
Make sure they have enough hard drive space, enough RAM and processing power to actually run well.
Yeah. It's kind of like building a house.
Exactly.
You wouldn't want to build a tiny little foundation
Mhm.
and then try to put a huge mansion on top of it.
Oh.
Give those virtual servers what they need to really work.
And another thing to remember, double check those IP addresses.
Oh, yeah.
One wrong number and your whole network could be down.
So it's like putting the wrong coordinates into your GPS.
Yeah, you'll be lost and confused.
Exactly. So as you start working on Windows Server this week, remember to just take it one step at a time. Don't be afraid to experiment, ask questions, and have fun.
This is your chance to learn a really valuable skill, and it's something that employers are looking for. So really embrace the challenge and enjoy the process.
Well said. So that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of Windows Server. We hope you found this helpful,
Yeah.
and we wish you the best of luck with your studies.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those servers running.
See you, everyone.